Hi, my name's Nate Chai. I'm here with Kristian James, the founder of Hawkwood Recruitment, and it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
So you describe yourself as a perpetual entrepreneur.
I think an aspiring entrepreneur.
An aspiring entrepreneur.
Certainly an opportunist is probably the best way to describe it. I've definitely always had like entrepreneurial aspirations, and I've instinctively kind of tried to identify opportunities to set up little businesses and that kind of stuff. That's true, yeah.
How old were you when you set up your first, well, I don't want to call it like a business, but when did you first start, like, I guess, making money through your own initiative?
Yeah, I mean, well, so basically I was the kid on the playground you'd always go to buy Pokemon cards or a CD or something like that. Like I'd always I just had like a kind of wheeler dealer.
I'm imagining you in like a big like duster, like, oh, do you want to, we've got the latest Linkin Park CD here.
To be honest, not a million miles off. I did have a Parker, but yeah, I didn't carry the CDs around it in like that. But yeah, to be honest, I was always just kind of wheeling and dealing, really. I'd always just loved the buzz of wheeling and dealing. At the time, I thought I did it for the money. I think in hindsight, I probably did it because I love the camaraderie of just wheeling and dealing. Like I get a real buzz from that. So yeah, a very, very young age. And then as I got a little bit older, I mean, when we first got our computer, I got our first home computer and the internet first came around, that's when things really ramped up for me, because I found Alibaba, and before I knew it, I was importing various products from China and selling them on eBay. This then kind of ballooned a little bit, and I literally was going to like pound shops in the high street, buying things for £1 and selling them for like between £3 and £5
Retail
each.
arbitrage.
Yeah. It was to be honest, it became an addiction for me. Like I got a real buzz out of selling, sending something off, growing. Anything we had around the house I started selling on there, and eBay became...
What's your mum like? Kristian,
yeah,
where are these saucepans gone?
I think, to be honest, she is actually really supportive, and she really kind of like admired like my desire to kind of try and create something. So yeah, I mean that kind of took up a lot of my time, but I was doing that on the side of like jobs that I had while I was at school. I used to sell double glazing and stuff over the phone and stuff like that. So yeah, I've always been drawn to jobs or endeavors that are kind of quite financially driven, because for me it was just like I really wanted to make money to ultimately create a lifestyle that I really aspired to have. So yeah, I've always been messing around with kind of different business ideas and stuff like that growing up, really, to be honest with you. And so yeah.
I'm really interested in the, well, not double glazing specifically, but that kind of commission-only, performance-based roles.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, they're quite scared of that. Because, well, I don't really know why. I guess it's because of the possibility of failure. And also, I think you have to be quite competitive as a person to really flourish in that role. What advice would you have for the viewers who maybe don't have that competitive edge?
Yeah, I mean, I think that firstly, sales roles aren't going to be for everyone. If you don't like trying to sell something to them and having to handle objections and try and push through a sale, I completely understand that. For me, I actually really enjoy that. So the commission-based roles often tend to be sales roles. I went into them personally because I felt confident that I would do well in them. So actually the risk of failure and not earning that much, for me, wasn't much of a consideration. I'm not necessarily confident in every aspect of life, but in when it comes to kind of business and sales, I am relatively confident. So I think that if you think you are motivated by sales and you're cut out for sales, and by that I mean you're self-motivated, you've got your resilient, you can take knockbacks and keep going, then I think that those kind of roles are a great thing to do, especially as a young person, because they're very character building, and competition I think is healthy to an extent, and you'll probably learn a lot about yourself through doing it. But if it's not for you, you're just setting yourself up to fail. But I think deep down you know what kind of person you are. So if it's for you, great. If not, do something else.
I mean, it's fascinating hearing your perspective on it, because what do they say? If you've started a business, be it product or service, you have to take on the primary sales role, because no one will have the same level of passion about the value that you offer than you.
Yeah.
And therefore, some level of sales ability is necessary. So I guess the question that I'm asking is, for those that would not consider themselves salespeople, is their entrepreneurial future just completely black, or?
Absolutely not. I mean, look, the founder of WhatsApp, I mean, I've watched an interview with him, and he is absolutely in no way a salesperson. He just built a really good product. And the great thing about the world these days is that the internet has meant that you actually don't necessarily need to be a salesperson, depending on the industry. You need to maybe be a bit of a marketeer. But even then, if you're not great at marketing, but you've got an amazing product, there's a fair chance someone's going to find it. And you can obviously outsource marketing to other people. So, no, there's absolutely not. It depends on the industry sector. For me, running a recruitment business, if I couldn't sell, it would be very hard to run this business, because it's a sales business. But no, I think the world has changed, and the internet has massively leveled the playing field, in my opinion, in that respect.
Wonderful. So you're at school, you're wheeling and dealing, your mum is very supportive, and then you go to university. What did you study at uni?
I studied business management with Mandarin.
Oh, obviously. That's very tactical of you.
Yeah, well, basically, because I was buying all of this stuff from China, I thought potentially there'd be a real opportunity in the future if I could speak the language and spend a bit of time there. Equally, my mum's boyfriend runs a business, and he was importing stuff from China, and he was talking about, being the next superpower. So I thought that a lot of people study a business management degree, and I knew that's what I wanted to do because it's what I love. But I thought if I have the ability to speak Mandarin on the side, it would differentiate me from other people as well. So that was the kind of thinking behind that, really.
And then you left university, and then you started working for Michael Page.
Yeah, so basically I'd read James Caan's autobiography, and he kind of set up his business in
James
recruitment.
Caan's from Dragon Den.
Yeah, and so he set up Alexander Mann Solutions, which is a big recruitment business, and his journey sounded really interesting to me. I have always felt as though was a relatively good kind of judge of character, I suppose. So the idea of identifying a candidate and thinking, I really think that person is good, and being able to then place them into a role, I just thought it was sales, but with an added dimension that really appealed to me. Because I knew I liked sales, but I'd sold double glazing, I've sold newspapers subscriptions. I found it quite one-dimensional, as much as I did learn a lot from it. For me, recruitment would give me a bit more complexity that would just make the role a bit more interesting. So, when I graduated, I found what I believed to be the kind of best option for me as a graduate with no experience in Michael Page, because they're a big FTSE 250 and they've got kind of really well-respected training and development. I basically got a job working for the HR division, so recruiting HR professionals into kind of media businesses and stuff like that. I had no experience at the time. I ended up kind of spending 4 years there, managing a small team by the time I left.
But you left after 4 years. You left Michael Page, FTSE 250 company, and said, I can do this myself. What did your director say when you told them that?
I mean, they definitely felt as though it was too early to do it. I think they felt as though I was making a mistake, in that I would have benefited from spending a lot longer there, getting more experience and more expanding my network further. But equally, I think their job is to try and persuade me to stay. So I'll never really know what they felt deep down. I actually believe they felt as though I maybe would make it work, because once the resignation had been accepted and everything like that, they took me out for beers just to say thanks, and they were a bit more open, and they were kind of like, I think you'll be okay, kind of thing. So that was good to hear. And generally speaking, they were really, really supportive. I think they were disappointed, and they would have loved. I think they felt the sensible thing was for me to stay for longer, but my mind was made up. For me, I always thought I'd probably do it in my 30s, and I was 27, I think, at the time. So it was definitely a lot sooner. But the reason that I decided to do it then is, I couldn't get it off my mind, and it was just so exciting to me that I just thought, I can't wait to do this. B, I was young, single, no mortgage, no kids. So, and you know, I'd spoken to a lot of directors at Michael Page who were like, oh, I'd love to have done that one day, but then I had a child and my responsibilities changed.
Don't have kids. That seems to be.
Yeah. But so, I don't know about that. But yeah, for me, I just felt as though timing wise, whilst I was anxious about the lack of experience I had and worried that I wouldn't make it work and I didn't have the maturity, I knew that I would work as hard as I needed to make it work. And when it all boils down to it, I think grit, determination outdoes experience every single time.
Grit, determination outdoes experience.
For me personally, yeah. If you're experienced but you don't have quite that same level of grit, I mean, what sometimes happens, and I'm sure there are plenty of exceptions to this, as you get a bit older, you can mellow out a little bit more. Whereas I am still at a point now where I'm just like fiercely driven. I haven't had so many knockbacks that my ambition is still kind of up here.
You're not jaded.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think as you get older, you have knockbacks, you have other responsibilities, you've seen other people fail, you start placing limitations on yourself. For me, I haven't reached that period yet. So for me, it felt like the perfect time. I knew I could spend all of my evenings and weekends doing it. And equally, I'm at an age where I can afford to not have a huge income because, you know, some of my friends that have been working for a few years. When we go out to pubs, we go to normal pubs. My local supermarket is a Lidl. I still use my mum's Netflix logins. You know, like I'm not living this life of a 40-year-old guy who's going on holidays and has a nice car and that kind of thing. So I knew that I could make it work financially as well if I didn't end up earning money straight away.
Cool. So what advice would you have for viewers here who are thinking about starting a business?
I think the first thing I would say is give some real thought as to whether or not you are cut out for the entrepreneurial life. I think being an entrepreneur has become very fashionable these days. They're the new kind of rock stars because everyone wants to be the next Mark Zuckerberg. But actually, there are a lot of people who are kidding themselves into believing they're an entrepreneur, and I don't believe they are. Because I think a lot of people lack self-awareness. So I would really encourage anyone to look inward and ask yourself, are you the type of person who can motivate yourself when no one else is watching? You know, can you get out of bed in the morning knowing that if you have another 2 hours, no one is going to know? Are you the kind of person who can take knockbacks on the chin and keep going without anyone else to put their arm around you? Are you someone who has the ability to be consistent? And I think this is one of the most important things because lots of people might set up a business, they're really enthusiastic for 2 months, and then the reality of the mundane day-to-day sets in, and that is hard. So you've got to keep going. You've got to be consistent in terms of your approach, your work ethic, and that kind of thing. Are you the kind of person to whom success is going to go to your head? Because if you start making a bit of money early, you might put your feet up and everyone will think, oh, that doesn't happen. I promise you, I'm very driven. I've got a very good work ethic. I felt a level of complacency once I reached a point where I thought, even if I don't make any money for another year now, I can afford to live. It happens to everyone, I believe. There might be exceptions, but I would struggle to believe it. Can you handle success? Can you handle failure? I think are two of the big ones as well. If you think the answer to those is yes, then do it, because it's one of the most liberating things you'll ever do. Taking a risk, putting yourself out there and making it work is so incredibly powerful for your self-esteem and self-confidence. It's amazing. The respect you'll get from other people is just great, especially working in recruitment. People used to talk to me like a word that rhymes with it, yeah, so it's quite nice when people treat you differently. The financial rewards are there if it goes well. Being your own boss is an amazing sense of freedom you can't get elsewhere. You also have the freedom to take the business in whatever direction you want. So through the recruitment business, I'm making money that I can now use to launch other ventures on the side, which are things I'm just really, really passionate about. So it's one of the most amazing things you can do. In addition to being character building, you'll find out so much about yourself, because spending
like how you can't handle failure or success.
Yeah, exactly. But even just spending a lot of time on your own, like, it sounds really weird, but when you're surrounded by other people in an office all the time, you are so caught up in the day to day. When you are working from your bedroom, Monday to Friday, completely on your own, and at the weekends, your housemates are all out and you're all still in your bedroom working, you spend an obscene amount of time on your own, and what you end up having is a really loud chatter in your head all day long. You start having conversations with yourself. It sounds like I'm going crazy, but it's the reality of spending a lot of time on your own. And through that, that kind of introspection, you really start to learn a lot about yourself. What do you like? What are you passionate about? What do you actually want from your life? That kind of stuff. And for me, that's been really powerful.
So it sounds like the best piece of advice is ask yourself, am I going to be a dick if I fail or if I succeed? And just do it. If you're young and you don't have much in the way of responsibility, or you can handle the risk financially, just do it. Why not?
I think so, yeah, because especially when you're early in your career, you can take a setback. You've got plenty of time to make up for it. But equally, if you're later in your career but you can afford to take the risk, then do it. But from my experience, it's not as hard as you think it's going to be, because any entrepreneur you meet is going to tell you, oh, it's so hard, because people like to promote themselves. They don't want to be like, oh, it's easy, because then people don't respect them as much. So they'll say, oh, it's really, really hard, trust me. But it makes people feel like they can't do it. The truth is, if you have entrepreneurial spirit in your blood, and if you have a slightly above average level of ability in your field, as long as you've done the sufficient market research and that kind of stuff, there's a very, very high chance you'll succeed, I believe.
So Kristian runs Hawkwood Recruitment. They specialise in the creative industry?
Yeah, so we recruit HR professionals into the creative sectors and technology sectors of London, yeah.
If you guys are looking for either a job or to hire someone who is creative, where can they find you?
So you can visit our website, www.hawkwoodpartners.com, or you can email me directly at Kristian with a K @hawkwoodpartners.com.
Thanks.
Thanks for the plug there.